I'd like to call the September 15th, 2021 board meeting to order and remind everyone to please mute your audio when not speaking, as well as state your name prior to making a comment or motion and a second for an action item. I'd like to begin by asking each commissioner to please respond with a here when I call out their name. Commissioner Bagnell, you're on mute.
Sorry, muted. I'm here.
Righto. Commissioner Doan,
Here.
Commissioner Duggan,
Here.
and Commissioner Schmidt.
I am here.
Righto. All right, so we're going to begin by reports by our CEO and management staff.
All right. Let's see. Okay, I think I'm there. All right. So we on Portland Cryptosporidium results for the month of August 2021, the Portland Water Bureau reported no Cryptosporidium oocyst detections in water samples collected from the Bull Run headworks. Complete results of Portland's Cryptosporidium monitoring are posted on the city's website. However, we do have some late breaking news today, and I've just been trying to catch up on some emails today on this. But there was a positive for E. coli, and so they're retesting. I'm sorry, TC. Yeah, sorry. Thank you, Carrie. And so they're retesting. If it tests positive tomorrow, then we would have to tell some of our customers that there would be a boil water notice. So we're in that process now. September 16th, tomorrow, Talking Water, TVWD's next Talking Water virtual forum featuring customer assistance programs will be held tomorrow, September 16th at noon. Additional information about this and other forum offerings is available on the district's website at www.tvdw.org/virtual forums. Government Finance Officers Association Awards. So Paul and his team, once again, outstanding job. The Government Finance Officers Association of the United States and Canada, otherwise known as GFOA, has awarded the Certificate of Achievement for Excellence in Financial Reporting to Tualatin Valley Water Districts for its comprehensive annual financial report for the fiscal year ending June 30th, 2020. The report was judged by an impartial panel to meet the high standards of the program, which includes demonstrating a constructive spirit of full disclosure to clearly communicate its financial story and motivate potential users and user groups to read the report. The Certificate of Achievement is the highest form of recognition in the area of governmental accounting and financial reporting, and its attainment represents a significant accomplishment by a government and its management. So well done to Paul and his team. So now I'm going to hand over both the Safety Minute and Department Report to Paul Matthews, our CFO. And Paul, I'll let you take it away.
Well, thank you, Tom. And good evening, President Sanders and commissioners. So I want to talk schools in session, and kids are back in school, and Liberty's passed us. So I want to just bring into focus school safety zones. I've done this. I did it probably about 5 years ago, and it's a little bit of a graphic presentation. So I warn those that might be a little bit faint of heart. But I think this is really important as we send our kids off to school that we drive safely. A couple things to remember: school buses, you must stop when the red lights are flashing. It's not optional, you must stop. You do not stop if there's an unpaved median strip or barrier between the traffic lanes. So if it's a paved strip, you stop. If it's unpaved or there's a median, you don't need to stop. You must stop for painted median strips and turn lanes, which is prominent here in Oregon. The other thing, keep in mind, is that you need to stop for church buses and worker transport buses. So treat them just as you would a school bus and cooperate with the buses. A couple other things, keep in mind, speed limits. The speed limit for school zones is 20 miles per hour. It applies until there's either that sign that says you're at the end of the school zone or you see another speed zone posted. So where I live, drive down Saltzman Road, I know I'm clear when I see it turn to 35 miles per hour. And Oregon law requires drivers to stop for all school buses with flashing red lights, as I indicated before. All right, does speed matter? Yes, it does. It's very important. For pedestrian auto accidents, 90% chance of surviving if you're under 18 miles per hour, 50% chance of surviving if you're above 28 miles per hour. So slow down and you can keep people safer. Speed really does matter. Some other thoughts that you may want to consider, that there are many parking restrictions around schools. They're there for a reason. They're designated to maintain visibility for drivers and kids. So if you see a no parking zone, please don't park in those areas. They're designated that way for a reason. The other thing is, don't zip around cars that are stopped in traffic. Sometimes that driver in front of you who is stopped is waiting for a kid, a pet, or something else, and you can't always see them. So be very cautious when you're coming around cars like that. And continue to watch for kids in the neighborhood away from schools. They walk away from school, but they still are trying to get their way home. And I know, for example, in my neighborhood, a lot of children play out in the streets. It's where they congregate. It's where they make friends. It's frankly where they play football and basketball. And we need to make room for them for that. So if you are speeding in a school zone, I would say if you're lucky, you'll be pulled over by a police officer, and maybe you're cited, maybe you're not. But if you're lucky, you'll be pulled over. If you're unlucky, you may not be able to outlive this memory of actually being responsible for the painful circumstance for a family and a child. So I said it was going to be kind of graphic and shocking. I hope that this will cause all of us to slow down as we drive through school zones. So with that cheerful thought, I will now transition over to the Finance Department report, which won't be quite as heavy. President Bagnall, or President Sanders, shall I proceed?
Please do, Paul.
All right, moving right along here. I want to talk about our investment portfolio. So we provide information on that monthly in the month in review, and you probably look at it with a lot of interest. I know I do. And I just want to highlight some important parts of that and to give you a sense of some expectations that we may have as it relates to our unrealized gains that we're showing now and potentially future unrealized losses. I want to put that in perspective. But first, a few fun facts that we have. Right now, our portfolio is about $80 million in investments. It's coming down as we fund our capital investments in the Land Water Supply Program. But right now we have $80 million in there. It can go up if we take in bond proceeds and need to manage that as well. I like to say that it's the single largest asset managed by the district. And so it definitely gets our attention. It's governed by an adopted investment policy that, in fact, the board adopts each January. So you go through a process of adopting investment policy. And that it follows an investment strategy. I'm going to highlight here in a bit the difference between the policy and the strategy, but it's consistent with the district's financial needs, our strategy is, and it's compliant with our investment objectives. More on that in just a bit. But the bottom line here is it's managed with intention. We just don't stick the money out there and not worry about it. We actually spend a fair amount of time trying to forecast cash flow so we can have our money invested in the most productive way possible, but yet still have the flexibility to fund capital improvements and operating expenses as they come along. So a fair amount of time within the department is looking after the portfolio and forecasting when we're going to need the money. So our investment policy that you adopt every January, that provides the legal framework and the legal structure that allows us to invest. So it has restrictions on what we can invest in. A little bit more on that here in a bit. But the investment strategy really provides the guidance in making decisions and optimize the investments of funds. So our strategy, we develop that closely with our investment advisor, GPA, we've used successfully for this purpose for several years. They're professionals in this area. They've got the expertise to help us to implement that strategy and to follow that. So our investment objectives are safety, liquidity, risk management, compliance with Oregon law, and return. So we like to say that we're interested in the return of investment as much as we are the return on investment. So safety is a key component. But I also mention liquidity because we need to have the money available, especially now that we're in the midst of a large capital program. And in fact, we're entering that year where we can expect to be spending about $1 million per business day. We need to make sure that we have liquidity to keep the dollars rolling, to keep Mr. Krask and his team moving forward on that important initiative. So there are two buckets, virtual buckets, we may say, that we manage. One is we call our liquidity bucket. That's the money that we just maintain, again, to make payroll, to meet all the day-to-day needs, and to make sure that we can have adequate money to fund the cash flow needs of the district, including the investments in the WWSP and our in-district CIP. Most of that liquidity is maintained in the local government investment pool, the LGIP. That's a great investment for us. They're able to aggregate money from a lot of local governments. We're able to get a little bit more of a term on that, meaning that the investments can have a longer maturity. We can get the money within a day or so, but having that longer maturity gives us a little bit more yield. So it's a great opportunity for those liquid funds. But we also have our core investment. And our core investment is where we invest in long-term securities. Most of them are U.S. government securities or agencies of the U.S. government. Some of them are corporates. Right now, the spreads between U.S. government securities and corporates is really compressed. So we have a lot more in U.S. government securities. The core investment, we put it in there generally for a longer term to improve the yield, but we may also use that to mitigate some risks. And in fact, we did that 2 summers ago, where we were looking at an inverted yield curve. We were looking at future reinvestment opportunities. So we went a little bit longer than we might otherwise have done to mitigate that risk that interest rates were going to decline. You might say, what kind of a risk is declining interest rates? When interest rates decline, the fact is when we reinvest in the market, we can't earn the same return. And we have this money tied up and we can't get a good return on it. That was the risk that we're talking about mitigating. All right, so where are we now? We're right now, most of our investment is within the TVWD's portfolio. And the LGIP is actually at quite a low value right now. The reason for that is, again, 2 summers ago, we were going a little bit long in the market because we saw that we could withstand some maturity, and we lengthened that because it looked as if interest rates were going to decline. And then guess what? Interest rates did decline quite a bit. And so right now, as we spend money on the Willamette Water Supply Program and in-district CIP, we're generally taking out of the LGIP, whose return is about 55 basis points, 0.5%-ish. And we're leaving our portfolio intact because we have some securities that are yielding much higher return than that. So that's where we stand. Again, it's with intention and purposeful. Okay, so we're balancing risks. We want to manage interest rate risks. Now let's talk about what that is. So the longer maturity you have an investment, the greater sensitivity that value that maturity has to changes in interest rates. So as interest rates go down, the value of a security that has a fixed interest rate actually goes up. So I've got a bond that's yielding 2%. If interest rates drop down to 0.5%, the value of that bond goes up. And that's called an unrealized gain. Conversely, if I buy a security at 1% or 0.25% and interest rates go up to 1%, the value of that security goes down, the market value goes down. So when we're managing risk, we're trying to balance those things. Important to note that the district, we hold securities generally, we hold them until they mature. So this change in the market value, although it's reflected on our books, it doesn't really reflect our risk or our situation. We maintain high liquidity. We anticipate the cash requirements to fund our capital expenditures. We also look at our cash inflows. So we're trying to monitor what is happening with water sales. We can forecast what the revenue coming in. SDCs are a little bit more of a difficult thing, but we try to anticipate that net cash flow. We maintain a benchmark of about 1.5 years on our average maturity. Again, we went a little bit longer on that when interest rates were about to turn, and we're thankful for that. Right now, our average maturity is declined to about 7 months, and that's, again, based on market. If we go out to the market right now and reinvest, we're going to be getting comparable securities at 20, 30, 40 basis points. And our legacy investments are about 1.5%. So we want to manage that as well. As I mentioned before, we hold maturities we hold the securities through to maturity. That's the book yield. And I did talk about interest rates, how they affect the market value. So right now, if you look at TVWD's books, you'll see that we have a large unrealized gain. So what that means is that we bought these securities when interest rates were relatively high and interest rates have gone down. And we're talking about $500,000. And it's easy for us to say, wow, we're brilliant. We went out and we did this. We made $500,000 for the district. Let's not say that, because 2 years from now, we're going to be in the exact opposite situation where the securities that we buy now, and we have no choice, the interest rates set by the market, not by us, are low. They're generally going to go up, in which case we'll see that we'll have an unrealized loss. Let me ask this. There's a lot of chat going back and forth about the subtitles being turned on. Is there something I need to do to turn those on?
No,
No,
it
Paul,
looks like it's taken care of.
Okay. Sorry about that. One of the things that we do is we maintain a forecast of our interest earnings rate. We put this in our financial plan. We use it for a lot of things. We use it in our conversations with our credit rating agencies. We also use it in the business case evaluation guidelines I'll talk about just in a minute here. And you can see this sharp decline that we're forecasting in our interest earnings. Now, as I mentioned, the LGIP is at about 55 basis points. So the sharp decline that you see there is our legacy investment. As those mature, we'll have to go out to market. We'll probably be putting the money in the LGIP and earning that lower return. So we're going to see the returns decline as those maturities we purchased 2 years ago start to mature. But that's just the way the market moves. I mentioned our business case evaluation guidelines. This is something that we use district-wide when we're trying to do a business case, and we incorporate some of these metrics in these numbers. So all the information that we have here is based on our analysis of the market interest rates and working with our professional advisors. So finding the right balance, our strategy emphasizes safety, liquidity, and risk management. It's important to keep yield in perspective in today's volatile market and low interest rate market. I'm very concerned that interest rates are going to go up and that our market value will go down. We'll have this unrealized loss, and I don't want people to lose confidence in what we're doing. It's just a matter of the market moving and how that works. Having a strategy is critical to managing yield and risk while we're earning attractive yields, and we do have a strategy. We work closely with our professional advisors to manage that. So with that concludes my department report, and answer any questions that you might have.
Any questions from members of the board? No? Thank you, Paul. All righty. Next thing is we're going to move on to Commissioner Communications, reports of meetings attended. We'll begin, please. Bernice, can you hear okay? Are you able to? Hello?
Bernice has an identical twin.
Yeah, I thought that was frozen. Okay, she might have been logging in and out to see if she could get changed over to not being a temporary guest. So we'll hold for just a second. I would hum elevator music if it was worthwhile.
Well, while we're waiting for Commissioner Bagnall,
There we go.
I put on the in the chat a picture that I found of a plaque. Well, I took the picture of the plaque that I found at Mount McKelvey pump station and reservoir next to Somerset. And there's somebody's name there that's familiar with us, so I thought that was fun.
That's neat. Mike Lindberg. How long was he a commissioner for?
Long time.
Was he?
Yeah.
There you go.
Yeah, he was a commissioner like forever. And we used to actually, when I worked at the Water Bureau, he used to be known as Commissioner Windsock because he would change his views depending on who saw him last.
Politically astute.
So did he pass?
Oh, I was just asking who he was. I have no idea if he's still with us or not.
I think he is. He was commissioner for about 10 years.
Yeah, I don't think he's
I'd
passed.
have to stop there.
He's still with us.
Yeah.
There you go. Alrighty, that's cool. Well, welcome back, Bernice. We're about to start the commissioners.
I can't seem to get in as anything other than guest, but so whatever, I am a guest.
You are our most important guest. Does that make you feel better?
I may possibly be our only guest.
I didn't say that part. I just said you were the most important guests. Would you like to begin with
start singing the Disney song right now? Sorry, President.
Bernice, would you like to start with your meetings attended, please?
Why not? Although now I just want to break into be our guest. Be our guest. and that's your fault, Commissioner Duggan. So I have only 3 meetings to report. The first is that on August 31st, I attended the board policies review meeting with Commissioner Duggan and our CEO and our legal counsel. And we were discussing chapters 1 through 5 of the policies and just, putting everyone on notice. We've made some changes. Be ready. My second meeting is yesterday, the 14th of September. We had another board policies review meeting, and that was also with our CEO, legal counsel, and with Jim Duggan and myself. And that was to go over chapters 6 through 11 on the board policies. And then, of course, tonight's meeting with regular district business.
Righto. Thank you, Commissioner Duggan. Would you like to go next, please?
Sure. On August 21st, I attended the Talking Rates Virtual Forum number 3. On the 31st, I attended the Board Policy Committee meeting that Commissioner Bagnall just reported. On September 2nd, I attended the regular monthly meeting of the Willamette Water Supply Project. Water Supply System Consortium. On the 8th of September, I attended the Regional Water Providers Consortium Executive Committee meeting, where we talked about updating the strategic plan for the consortium. On September 9th, I went to the Willamette Water Supply Program office to sign the backlog of documents that needed to be signed. And then yesterday, I had the agenda planning meeting with the CEO and board president, and also the second policy board meeting in the afternoon with Commissioner Bagnall, as she reported. and then tonight's meetings. And that's it for me for September.
Well, Commissioner Doan, I apologize. I went out of alphabetical order. Are you ready, sir?
That's all right. I can deal with things being outside of alphabetical order. We need to go by the second letter of last name and do those orders. Okay, on the 21st of August, I attended the same meeting that Jim Duggan attended on an open forum for discussing of rates. On the September 1st, I went to a webinar concerning earthquake risks for water systems, and then tonight's meeting.
Great, thank you. My apologies again. Can't
Hey, don't
spell.
worry.
Still to this day, poor speller. Commissioner Schmidt.
Yes, I have just tonight's meeting, and that's it.
I know, short and sweet. Very good. And for myself, I only have 2 meetings as well, quietly. On the 14th, met with the CEO and Vice President Duggan to address the board agenda planning, and then tonight's monthly meeting. Okay, now that's taken care of. The next item is the topics to be raised by commissioners. Do any commissioners have a topic to be raised at this time? Great. Not hearing any, we'll move into the next section, which is our public comment period. Public comment time is set aside for persons wishing to address the board on items on the consent agenda and matters not on the agenda. Additional public comment will be invited on agenda items as they are presented. Do we have any persons who would like to comment? I didn't see any particular guests today and hadn't heard of anything, so I will assume at this point that there aren't any public members that wish to speak. So we're going to move on rather rapidly this evening to the consent agenda. The consent agenda items are considered to be routine and may be enacted in one motion without separate discussion. Any board members may request that an item be removed by motion for discussion and separate action. Any items requested to be removed from the consent agenda for separate discussion will be considered immediately after the board has approved those items which do not require discussion. Our first item is the official only item is approval of the August 18th, 2021 regular meeting minutes. Do I have a motion and a second to approve the consent agenda as presented?
This is Commissioner Duggan, so moved.
Commissioner Schmidt, second.
Thank you. At this time, I'd like to ask our meeting recorder to provide the roll call votes.
Commissioner Bagnall,
Yes.
Commissioner Doan,
Yes.
Commissioner Duggan,
Yes.
Commissioner Sanders,
Yes.
Commissioner Schmidt.
Yes.
All right, the motion passes. Moving right along then, we will now attend to this evening's business agenda. And the item for this evening's business agenda is to consider adopting Resolution 10-21. This is a resolution establishing water rates and other service charges for the Tualatin Valley Water District with an effective date of November 1st, 2021. I'm going to hand off now to the staff for a report on the rate and service charges.
Well, good evening again, President Sanders. This is Paul Matthews, Chief Financial Officer, and I'll be presenting tonight's staff report on the proposed rate changes. This is a culmination of quite a long process that the district has gone through. We started this process, believe it or not, before COVID hit, as the district started a strategic planning process We did a SWOT analysis with the staff, leadership team, and that helped drive our strategic initiatives that we presented to the board and our financial strategies that we presented to the board earlier this year. So that process started in 2019 and culminated then in the financial plan that we brought to you. The financial strategy brought to you in March, and the financial plan that you approved in May. And the budget that you then adopted in June. So this is the final step of the process for us until we start on the next phase, at least for the finance group, which is the audit. All that gets to the accountability, and we're having our auditors are going to be in the office next week to begin that process. So it's been kind of a long, a long process, been a fruitful process, and all along the way, we've engaged the public in discussions on the rates and the proposals that we have. Just to highlight some of those things that we've done. First, and of course you all know this, I'm doing this more for the public record because many of you participate in this. It started with our virtual open houses. We used the Talk and Water format, and we had actually 3 open houses that we did. First, on August 11th, we had 2 open houses, one that started at noon, and for folks that could find it easier to attend at that time, another one that started at 6 p.m. And then we had the regular meeting on August 18th, where you held an open public hearing and you took public testimony at that hearing. We followed that up with another virtual open house, again following the Talk and Water format, on Saturday, August 21st at 9:30 a.m. to get those folks that found it easier to attend on a weekend. We also received public comment at that open house. On August 25th, we closed the public comment period. We received comments consistent with the direction you gave us in Resolution 08-22 that was adopted, 08-21 that was adopted in July. We provided that in your board packet, as well as some additional public comments that we received that were outside of that period. And Andrew Watson will be talking about the public process here a little bit later in the presentation. That brings us to tonight, where we actually, after going through this public process, are presenting the resolution for your consideration and requesting adoption. As again, we've talked about these things before, and I'm doing this primarily for the public record, but we did talk to the public throughout this process about the risks that TVWD has that threatens our water supply. Earthquakes, droughts, climate change, power outages, and fires. We've experienced power outages and fires recently. Climate change is ongoing. Drought, we've had droughts recently. And earthquake, the Cascade Subduction Zone earthquake is the one that we are building our water supply system to withstand. So how has the district approached that? By having multiple sources of water. And this has been a board priority for years, is to have the district pursue multiple sources of supply. River water we'll have through the Willamette Water Supply System that we're building. We have investment in the Barney Reservoir System, which provides stored water for us. We have our aquifer storage and recovery wells at the Grabhorn facility. And of course, we have regional interties and partnerships, whether it's the Joint Water Commission or with the City of Portland, with Tigard and others. We have systems where we're able to share water around the region in the emergency. And the last item I want to mention here is water conservation, which has been critical to allow us more time to build the water supply program that we have now. So all those sources the district has and has developed and continues to develop. We then talked to the public about how we use their money, because all the money that we do get is from the public. So a fair amount of this is construction on the additional water supply, the Willamette Water Supply System. And Dave Krask was kind enough to make several presentations, which of course you have seen as well, to help explain the benefits of the program and its magnitude, so people can get an idea of really what kind of monumental undertaking this is. We also have to operate the system and fund maintenance repairs, and we do purchase water as well. So all those things are the primary ways that we use the money that we get from our customers. Our near-term infrastructure investment is sizable. Presented in this graph is our capital improvement plan out through 2031. The blue area that you see there is the amount that's being spent on the Willamette Water Supply System. The gray area is the in-district CIP. Keep in mind that part of that gray area is the Metzger Pipeline East, which is a necessary part of the supply system that will take the Willamette water around through Metzger, north up into the what we call the Wolf Creek system as well, and loop the water around. It is being constructed by the Willamette Water Supply Program on behalf of the district, but it's included in the gray area. You can see that we're about $250 million in spending by 2023. And so this is the peak. We've been planning I've been planning for this for about a decade. The district's been planning much longer than that, going back to getting the original water rights in 1972. But we're really starting to see the construction and the funding kind of peak here in the next couple of years. So managing cost has been important as we look at this enormous investment we're making, generational investment on behalf of our customers. We are very aware of the burden this places on our customers, especially given that we're in the environment we are with COVID. So we've done a lot to manage our costs carefully. In this most recent biennial budget, we've actually reduced our personnel service budget by 2.8%. That's a big ask over a 2-year period to see not an increase in the personnel service budget on an annual basis, but over 2 years to see a decrease. We're very proud of that. We've deferred investment of over $50 million on infrastructure projects, and we partnered with other utilities to lower our cost of the share of the projects. All those things we've done to make our rates as affordable as possible, but yet still invest in the infrastructure to complete our water supply program. Our financial performance, give you a quick update on that. Revenues have been negatively affected by COVID. We've seen that, and we've talked to the board about that, and we did talk to the customers. Our system development charges were high, but they've been moderate. We talked to our customers about that as well. On the expenditure side, management is focused on as much savings as we can find to provide more flexibility during the COVID-19 period. So we've held vacancies in positions. We've done everything that we can to manage those operating expenses. Our operating expenditures have been below budget, so we've been able to manage those expenditures. I will mention, though, that we did have a higher than anticipated bad debt expense. You might imagine that's going to happen when you have COVID-19. And again, we have a policy of not shutting off customers that haven't paid their water bill. That means their bad debt has accumulated, and we've taken a larger expense against that bad debt, as would be required by our accounting principles. And our capital expenditures have been below budget. Cash, the project, our projected in-fund balances have been higher than expected, and that's in part because of the savings and the capital outlay. Revenues have been working the other direction on us, but we've been able to manage through that, so we're proud of that. We also have, at the time I put this together, $68 million in cash accessible from the WIFI program. We just today got an approval. It's now up to over $70 million. I've got the number, but not right at the top of my head here. So bottom line, conclusions here is that COVID-19 has reduced our revenue effect in the district's financial performance. It has affected our debt strategy. We have had savings to offset those near-term losses in revenue despite an increase in our bad debt expense, and the district's cash position remains strong. Taking all that into account, we built our financial strategies around that and the rate proposals themselves. So a key part of that is using long-term debt to lower the near-term impact on our rates and our customers. I mentioned the WIFI loan. We have a $388 million WIFI loan that's going to be able to offset quite a bit of that. Given our financial strategy now and the rates that we're proposing, we're looking at an additional $36 million in revenue bonds for the total package to fund the program. When it's all said and done, we expect $424 million of new debt out there, new money debt, we call it. There'll also be some capitalized interest as well, another $20 million is our estimate there. All that'll be depending on cash flow. But the bottom line, our funding strategy and our debt plan is feasible and intact. Risk of the forecast, we always cover this with the board and with the public as well. You've all heard this before, so we're going to skip through this in an effort to save a little bit of time. But those risks are still there, and we monitor them very closely. So the district's rate structure, a couple things I want to mention there. There are three main components that we're considering tonight. The volume charges that we have are fixed charges, and then we have our other charges. On the volume charge side, we have a two-block rate structure. The block one, the lower block rate, is for water that's used more consistently throughout the year for residential customers. It's the first 14 CCF of water in a month, or 28 CCF over a 2-month period. And that CCF is 100 cubic feet of water, about 748 gallons. That is a lower cost water because it doesn't cost us as much to provide that water on that more consistent basis. The block 2 water is any consumption over that 28 CCF per month, and that accounts for the fact that we have to build extra capacity to meet those peak summertime needs. That same rate structure applies to our non-single family residential customers, but rather than using the fixed block amount of 14 CCF per month, we use 140% of their average annual consumption. Those numbers were calibrated to come out with an even fair allocation of cost among the customers, following the district's and the board's policy of cost of service. So that's still in place. The fixed charges vary based on meter sizes and recover the cost of meters, billing, maintenance of the services, and some of the costs related to meeting fire flow requirements, which are important even if you aren't consuming water. In addition, we do have other charges that I'll talk about tonight. These are the miscellaneous charges that the district assesses when it does things on behalf of customers or others. The whole idea there is to set those charges to recover the cost so we don't have customers subsidizing each other, and more about that in just a moment. So our proposed rates, this is what we presented to the public throughout the open houses as well as during the public hearing. The block 1 rate would go from $5.62 in November to $6.15, and then in November of 2022 to $6.73. The block 2 would go from about $8 to about $8.75 in November of 2021, and then $9.60 in November of 22. As I mentioned, the fixed charges are based on the size of the meter, and they do recover, as I said before, the cost of the meter, billing, maintenance of the service line, as well as some of that fire flow requirements, and you can see what those costs are. Presented here are the monthly charges. Most of our customers, residential customers, are billed on a bi-monthly basis, but we show these on a monthly basis to make it more comparable to other utility bills that our customers pay. We also look at the impact on our customers of these bills, and we start with our typical customer, which is a customer using about 7 CCF of water, which is the typical customer. We are presenting here graphically are the impacts. The current, the gray area is the fixed charge. The blue area is the volume charge. You can see that the total bill will be going up from about $56.33 to about $61.65 in November, and then up to $67.48 in November of 2022. I have the same information presented in a tabular form. I prefer tables. It's easier for me to read tables than try to line up graphs. But it's about a $5.32 increase starting November, and a $5.83 increase starting November of 2022. We have an asterisk next to that. When we sent out the postcard announcing the public hearing, we had a typographical error in there. We had a transcription error. So the actual number here, 583, is the number that should have been in that postcard. We also look at customers using more than the typical amount. So an above average customer might use 12 CCF of water in a 1-month period, 24 CCF over a 2-month period, and this might be a customer in the middle of summer that might have larger demands. Their increase would be about $8 in November 2021. Of course, they're probably not going to have a bill that size in November, but that would be the increase for that 12 CCF. And then about $8.73 in November of 22. And then we look at a very large customer, a very high water using customer. Their bill will go up about $20 this November and about $21.50 in the subsequent year. With that, I'm going to ask Andrea to brief us on the public outreach and the comments. Andrea?
Thank you. Good evening, Chair Sanders and Commissioners. We did, as Paul mentioned earlier, do a multi-phased approach to outreach. In addition to all the formal processes, we did 2 social media posts about the public information meetings and process. We received 6 comments on the second post, which was on August 20th. This is a steep decline from what we saw 2 years ago in the social media venue. So, you know, just a note that we were expecting more because people are home a little bit more and on their devices a little bit more, but we actually got less engagement on that method. We also received and responded to the 2 written letters the district received. And we also do track website information because we have the ability to put that right front and center. So when they get the postcard in the mail, you know, we hope they'll come there for additional information. And this, in this process since August 1st, we had 497 views of that rates information, and the average time spent on that page was 3 minutes and 23 seconds. That's up from 2019, where we had 470 views and they were on there for 2 minutes and 20 seconds. So we think the improvements to the website, just using a little bit more graphics to break up the information, is helping people stick with that a little bit longer. We also had the 3 informational sessions. I know many of you attended those. We did have 11 guests on the first session and 30 replays of the video. And we had 12 guests at the second session with 18 replays. And then the Saturday session, which was the last one, we had 5 customers who attended, and we have viewed that video 6 times. So, you know, that's kind of a summary. And we also received 19 emails, which we responded to those that had questions. And then otherwise, we will follow up with all the people who wrote or emailed or left us their information in the forms process, letting them know that you've made a decision and thanking them for their participation. That's what I have on outreach.
Thank you, Andrea. Any questions for Andrea before I move on to the other fees and charges?
Commissioner Bagnell?
It's not so much a question as it is a comment that I have noticed that people customers have said with some annoyance in their voice that to commissioners specifically, do you guys ever vote against a rate increase? And that's one of those things that in future rate outreach, it would be nice if we could focus just a little bit more on what our internal process is instead of just what our external process is, because the fact of the matter is that commissioners get at least 2, if not more, workshops in which we comment back to staff about how this rate increase is not acceptable. We need to do something. We want to show our customers this or that. None of that discussion really gets represented. So I can understand the frustration of customers who feel like, well, hey, you just rubber stamp whatever the staff says. And that is not the case. It's very much a back and forth process. And I would like to somehow make that a little more clear.
Okay.
Commissioner Bagnell, that's in my interaction with one customer in particular where he made that point. I did make your exact point back. We work closely with the board, and they help us craft the strategy that is consistent, and so we're not coming at this uninformed. And we need to make that part of our presentation, as you indicate, because it's clear that people don't understand that, and we haven't made that clear. So I appreciate that comment, and it's very consistent with what I heard from one customer in particular.
I certainly heard it from Chris Brown in particular, and I'm glad that I thank you for reaching out to him, and I'm glad you were able to have that conversation, because I sort of felt, I don't know what's the right word, just like, well, no, that's not true. We don't just, staff doesn't just slap a number on us without any consideration, and we don't just accept it without any consideration.
Yes, and we just need to make that point. And we've maybe I haven't spent enough time talking about the financial process that we go through and the development of the strategies and the financial plan and the budget. You might remember a few years ago we had a much more elaborate graphic, and we'd step through those things. And I felt like I was beating that a little bit too much. The message was so familiar to you all that it just seemed to be redundant. But maybe that could be helpful in letting people understand there's a lot of work that goes in front of this effort, and this really is the culmination of a lot of input we've received from the board, all the way back to the strategies, through the development of actually the strategic planning process, the financial strategies, the financial plan, the budget, and now here we are. And we'll work on that because it's an area we can definitely improve. Anything else for Andrew before we? Well, I'm going to move on then to the other fees and charges. And these are charges that the district assesses for the various services that we provide. We update these to reflect the changes in the district's cost of providing these services. The goal here is to make sure that we aren't subsidizing these activities from water rates, or just the reverse. We don't want to be subsidizing our water rates by overcharging customers for these services. So each, through the rate setting process, we go through an analysis of these costs, and the impact this year is quite a bit smaller than what we may have imagined, given some of the inflationary costs that we've seen, primarily because of the labor cost and the way that our personal service cost has gone down and how we managed our PERS funding with the side account. So that is kind of the backstory on these things. I presented these during the public hearing, the specific information that we have here. And so I'm not going to go through each one of them and speak to them unless there are particular questions about them. But these are numbers that, of course, you've seen before last month and we've talked about in the past. So we are proposing that these be updated as part of Exhibit B to the rate resolution. So that concludes my formal presentation. With that, I'd like to provide the staff recommendation, and that is that staff recommends the board adopt resolution 10-21, a resolution establishing rates and other service charges for the Tualatin Valley Water District with an effective date of November 1st. That's a typographical error there. November 1st of 2021. Sorry about the typo on that. Good thing I caught it. November 1st, 2021. With that, I'll answer any questions that you may have.
Any questions from the members of the board? Okay. With that, then I will ask, is there a motion and a second to adopt resolution 10-21, a resolution establishing water rates and other service charges for the Tualatin Valley Water District with an effective date of November 1st, 2021?
This is Jim Doan. So moved.
And this is Commissioner Bagnall. I will second. And I do note that the slide says an effective date of November 21st. I assume that's an error.
That is correct. It is effective date of November 1st, 2021. Okay. I'd like to ask our meeting recorder to provide the roll call vote, please.
Commissioner Bagnall,
Yes.
Commissioner Doan,
Yes.
Commissioner Duggan,
Yes.
Commissioner Sanders,
Yes.
Commissioner Schmidt.
Yes.
All right. Sounds like the motion passes. There being no further business before the Board of Commissioners, this meeting will be adjourned. Before you all go, please remember that we have an executive session meeting. You will log out of this meeting and join the Teams meeting via a different link. And then last but not least, I just needed to ask the question, why didn't anyone take the school bus to school?
Is this a joke?
This is a joke.
This is Jim Doan. You had to live more than a mile from school.
Ah,
But I
the
grew up in Southern California where it didn't rain. So I just walked to school.
yeah, that's not bad. Well, the answer is it wouldn't fit through the door.
That is my kind of joke.
Oh, give me a break.
All right, we'll see the board members in executive session in just a minute.